Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is Rabi Mahmood and welcome back to lecture number 3. In this lecture we are going to discuss levels of language. Levels of language, I felt it necessary to share with you because these are the concepts that are going to come again and again throughout our course. So I felt the need to discuss these things with you initially, although I won't be able to give you a very detailed description of all these things, but just an overview. But before I move on to describing each and every level in detail, I want to tell you that what levels of language actually are. As a very first point, say aspects of language are often referred to as language levels. Aspects of language means a language if it has got different aspects. So all those aspects from which we can analyze it, we can carry out a research on a language, all those aspects are known as language levels. What do they actually do, and what is the purpose of language levels? They actually try to look carefully at the language. They help the readers they allow the readers to carefully look at the language, to analyze it, to see that how language is working on different levels, and there are the various different aspects of language structure which need separate consideration. One important point, and the important point about language aspects, is that these are the aspects of language structure. While we look at language and while we try to analyze the structure of language, then we get to know that language structure is further divided into different perspectives. That the structure of language has got different aspects. And what these aspects are? These aspects are referred to as levels of language. These are often referred to by linguists as different levels of language, as I just told you. If we just think of a single sentence for the moment, we would at least know the following levels. If we are trying to look at single sentence of a language, I've just told you that what these levels of language are. These levels of language are about are different aspects of language through which we can analyze it, through which we can look at the operational procedures of language. Yes, and as I am saying that if we are talking about language, so the sentences are made up of different words, and let's see that how a single sentence can further be divided into different levels. Let's see what these can be. The levels of language are described in this picture, in this diagram. First, you see that there are main 5 levels. On one hand, we have phonetics and phonology, we have morphology, we have syntax, we have semantics, and we have pragmatics. These are different aspects of a language. When we talk about any language, I'm not particularly talking about English language, rather I am saying that these levels, these things are appropriate, these are true for any language of the world. Any language of the world. All the languages would have these levels. As the very first level is phonetics and phonology, and it deals with all the sounds and system sounds, all individual sounds and the patternings of sounds. We are going to discuss this level in detail in our upcoming lecture. Then, we talk about morphology. We say morphology deals with the forms and the words. With the words, their shape, their formation, how words are formed, we say that we are discussing morphology. While we come to syntax, we say syntax deals with clauses and the sentence. It's the sentence structure. It is the grammatical aspect of language. So we'll discuss that in syntax. Semantics Semantics is the meanings of various kinds. While we try to explore the meanings of the words, we are saying that we are looking at the level of semantics. Then comes pragmatics. Pragmatics is about language use. If we say language use and the meanings of language means how simply the meanings mean if there is a single sentence, for example, close the door. It has different meanings. If we are going to analyze the meanings of the words, we are saying that we are discussing semantic aspect of language. And if we say that we are discussing pragmatics, we are talking about language use, that how language is used in different situations. Definitely, you know that language changes in formal and informal situations. We have different words that we use in different situations, so that is pragmatics. All these levels are a kind of bottom-up approach in linguistics or in language studies, where we move from the smallest unit to the largest unit. For example, while we look at the smallest unit, we have phonetics. And when we look at the objects of study, we say we have all human sounds. Then we move on to the one level up and we see that we have got the level of phonology. Phonology deals with the classified sounds, with the sound patternings. Then when we move up, a little up, we come towards morphology. Morphology, as we've just talked about, it deals with the words and the forms. Definitely the sounds are going to make up words. Then morphology moves up to the syntax. Syntax is the grammatical structure, sentence and the clauses, the structure of the grammatical structure. While we have words will make up a sentence, and that sentence would definitely have some kind of structure. So we say that we are studying the level of syntax. This syntax would move up to semantics, and we say that we are studying the meanings of the words. So it is when there are words, they have structure, definitely they are conveying some meanings. We are moving upwards. Then semantics leads us towards the largest level, that is pragmatics. Pragmatics is language use. You are going beyond, you are using language in different situations. This pragmatics would lead us towards another level that is not here, that is the level of discourse. And that's what I think is the broadest level, and we are going to look at it in the later slides. The first level of language is phonetics and phonology. Phonetics and phonology, the first level is, we can say, it's the base of language. It starts with the study of sounds. As we discussed earlier in a previous lecture, that language is nothing but the sounds. It's all about sounds. So today we are going to start our third lecture with the first level, and the first level, the base or the totality of language, is that of phonetics and phonology. Let's start by discussing firstly the definitions, and then we'll move on to discussing a few basic things. I'm not going to deal with all these levels in very much detail. Rather, I'll be giving you a knowledge that will be comprehensive enough, that will be concise as well at the same time. So the first thing, phonetics. Phonetics, we say, is the study of production, transmission and the perception of speech sounds. The focus is on many things. The first thing is the speech sounds. It is, as you know, phonetics is a study of speech sounds. The subject or the main title, the main thing of focus is the speech sounds. Speech sounds will be studied in three different ways in phonetics. The first way is that of the production. We are going to look at the production of the speech sounds if we study phonetics in detail. If we look at the transmission of the speech sounds, that how not only the sounds and produced, rather they are transmitted. When they are spoken, when they are uttered by a word, how are they transmitted from one mouth to the ear of the listener? While we discuss these properties of the speech sounds that are regarding transmission, it means we say that we are discussing phonetics. The third thing is that of perception of speech sounds. It's not only about the production, that's on the side of the speaker. It's not only about the transmission, that's about the medium, but phonetics is also about the perception of speech sounds that comes to the level of listeners, that how a listener listens to the speech sounds. Phonetics is the basis of the study of language, and as a scientific study of language, it refers to linguistics. So within linguistics, all these things are dealt as separate branches, are dealt as separate fields. Phonetics is further subdivided into these three types, and these are studied too much in detail if we go and study linguistics. But as linguistics is not our concern, our main concern is that of production, transmission, and the perception of speech sounds. So we have looked at phonetics is about the speech sounds. The first, actually, it leads us towards the three sub-branches of phonetics. The first sub-branch, as you can see, is that of articulatory phonetics. Articulatory phonetics, it's about the production. It is related to the production. That what are the manners of uttering or producing the speech sounds. It is related to that, to the articulation. What are the articulatory organs of the speech sounds that play an important part in the speech of certain sounds? Articulatory phonetics, it deals, as you know, with the articulation, with the production. So with articulatory would be focusing on two broader aspects. The first one is the manners of articulation, and the second is places of articulation. Manners of articulation, it is concerned with the way these sounds are produced, the manners, that how these sounds are reproduced. For example, if there is a sound that is p, the sound p, it is produced by the use of two lips, that is p. We close our lips, then we pronounce it. This is a bilabial, where the two lips are involved. So it is a sound that is known as bilabial sound. It is p. Okay? We studied that how, what is the manner, what is the way of pronouncing a sound, a speech sound. Then the second is about the manners of articulation, and the second is places of articulation. What are the places of articulation? What are the organs that are involved in the process of articulation of speech sound? Whether we are using our front teeth, are we using our glottal stop, what are we using our throat, what are the places, what are the organs that are used in the articulation of a specific speech sound? We are going to study in detail in this thing, in articulatory phonetics. It's about articulation. The second is acoustic phonetics. It is related to transmission. Transmission is the transformation of when a person has spoken the speech sounds, when a person has uttered certain statements, the speech sounds go out in the air, they are out of the mouth, they are produced by using the ways and the manners of articulation, then they go into the air. From the air, they are transformed into the ear of the listener. So it is about the acoustic. Acoustic phonetics is more about the physical properties of a language. The physical properties, that what are the things that are involved in the transmission, what are the things that make the listener audible of these sounds. The third is auditory phonetics. Auditory phonetics, this is concerned with the audition, with the listening, with the reception, with the perception of speech sounds. When the speech sounds are uttered and they are there in the ears of the listeners, in the ears of the people, that how do they listen to it, how it becomes audible. This is auditory phonetics. Okay, they would be paying concentration to the speech sounds, they would be listening to it, and within auditory phonetics we'll be looking at the mechanism of the ear, that what are the things that are involved in the perception and the audition of the speech sounds. This was more about the general phonetics. Phonetics is actually, let me tell you one thing about phonetics, that phonetics is general to all the languages. General means while we talk about the production, transmission and perception of speech sounds, definitely it would be paying focus to only to these three aspects in all the languages. Whereas while we come to phonology, phonology is another term. Phonology is the study of use and patterning of speech sounds. It's about the use, that once the speech sounds are there, they have been classified, they have been articulated, they have been produced, then how these speech sounds are patterned, what are the different formattings that they would make a combination of, what are the different patterns that we can have, that we can utilize them in. When we look for these patterns in this of the speech sounds in the language, we say that we are studying phonology. As I told you, that phonetics is general to all the languages. It is general because the speech sounds are there. Definitely there are speech sounds in all the languages. They are produced, yes, they are produced in all the languages. They are transmitted in all the languages, and then they are perceived in all the languages. So that is general, that is true for all the languages of the world. Whereas phonology is a specific to a specific language. We'll have different phonologies of different languages because, you know, there are the speech sounds. Every language has its own speech sounds. Its usage would be different. Every language uses its own speech sounds in its own way, in its own distinct way. The music of language is contained in the system of sounds which the human mouth is able to sing or say. Spoken language has a body and a breath to it. The set of possible human sounds as used in 3,000 to 5,000 languages can be represented in a print by the 46 units of the International Phonetic Alphabet. Yes, as I told you earlier, that there are the speech sounds. Every language has its own speech sounds. Now what happens? The combination or the standard or the normative standard or the collection of all these speech sounds is shown on international level in a chart. They are represented in a graphical form on a chart, and this is known as International Phonetic Alphabet, or simply we also call it sometimes the IPA chart, where we have a combination of all the manners and the places of all the speech sounds of all the languages of the world. However, each language has peculiar dialects, subsystems of sounds, and each individual voice can be recognized as a unique expression of the possible phonemes. Yes, what happens? The languages vary on the level of phonemes, on the level of phonology. While we come to the use of the language, while we come to the patterning of the language, the patterning varies from language to language. There is a change, there is diversity, there is a range of variety, there is innovation and creativity of these patterns while we talk about different languages. But while we talk about phonetics, it is concerned, it is related to all, it is generalized, whereas phonology is specific to one language. Yes, phonemes. Phonemes are the smallest, minimal, contrastive unit of speech is known as phoneme. Yes, this is definition. There are the three words that are really very, very important in this thing. Actually, the first important word in this is that phoneme is smallest. There are the speech sounds. Phoneme would be the smallest. Then the second is phoneme is minimal. Minimal, it cannot be further divided. It is the smallest of all. It is a minimal, it cannot be further divided. Then the third characteristic is it is contrastive unit. The word contrastive, that it can be contrasted, it can be replaced by some other phoneme within a speech sound. These are the three main qualities of phoneme. Smallest, it is the smallest of all. It is minimal, it is not further dividable. It is contrastive, because contrastive in the sense that it can be contrasted, it can be replaced, it can be changed with some other phoneme within a speech unit. That is known as phoneme. Now one very interesting thing for you is that English has 44 phonemes, and there are 44 phonemes in English. For these 44 phonemes are divided into consonants and vowels, okay? But there are total 26 alphabets in English. Isn't it interesting to note? There are total 26 alphabets. Alphabets are A, B, C, D, E. But when we talk about sounds, while we come towards sounds, it makes 44. And as you know, a very traditional thing, that there are always the consonants, and then there are the vowels. Consonants, vowels are, there are the 5 vowels in English, A, E, I, O, U. The very typical definition of the vowels is this. But now let's grow a little, and let me give you some new definitions of these consonants and the vowels, and let me talk a little about these phonemes. Firstly, you have noticed that there is a huge number of difference in alphabets and the sounds. So, although as we say, there is one sound, that is A sound, is pronounced in 8 different ways in English. You will be amazed to know that A sound is pronounced in 8 different ways in English language. That is why we have got a range of phonemes, a range of speech sounds in English, whereas we have got a little less alphabets, and the total strength of the alphabets is 26 only. Let's talk about consonants a little. Consonants are those speech sounds, consonants are those phonemes. When they are pronounced, there is a restriction in the airflow. Restriction in the airflow means while you would be trying to pronounce it, there would be a stop in the airflow. This is the airflow, you are trying to pronounce something and there is a restriction in that airflow. For example, let's look at one consonant, that is B. B. The sound B is pronounced with the closed lips and then the air is released. So there is a restriction in the airflow. So it is known as consonant. All the consonants would be having a restriction in the airflow. Now I'll be telling you about these consonants. These consonants, these 24 consonants are these things. There's a very easy way to remember it. The first consonant is P, B. You can remember it in pairs. P, B, T, D, K, G, F, V, yes, S, Z, Sh, J. There is Th, the, the, ch, j, h, m, n, ing, l, r, j, v. Yes, I would like to pronounce these sounds once again for your better understanding. Yes, these sounds are P, B, T, D, K, G, F, V, S, Z, Sh, J, T, D, Ch, J, H, M, N, ing, L, R, J, V. These are few of the consonants that are found. These are consonants, these are the speech sounds. I hope you'll keep practicing it. Let's move on to the vowels. I'll be telling you about a few of the vowels as well. Yes, the first vowel is A. Before I just move on to describing that what are these vowels, let me give you a little definition of vowel as well. Vowel, you pronounce the vowels when there is no restriction in their airflow. This is the main difference between consonants and the vowels. While you're pronouncing the consonants, there is a restriction in their airflow. For example, D, Th, K, G. G in goat, K in kettle, Ch in cherish. These are different consonants that I am pronouncing, and there's a restriction. But while we come to vowels, there is no restriction in the airflow. For example, A. This is A. Jesse, for example, in cat. For example, in rat. The next vowel is it's A, For example, it's a. For example, a is wash. Then there is another vowel, that is, this is a very, yes, this vowel is known as schwa vowel. Yes, this is known as schwa. Schwa is the smallest vowel and it takes a very little time to pronounce. For example, at. In the word, for example, there is a word at, and the vowels that you are going to pronounce at the beginning is at. The next is e. For example, in eat. For example, in teeth, it's e. The next is a. It's a. For example, in bat. Next is o. It's half o. God. Of. Then the next is, it's long o. Oil. O. The things like that. The next is, it's oo. It's oo sound. It is also known as hook sound. It's like, it likes hook, so it likes hook sound. Oo. Oo. For example, Luke. Took. Then the next is oo. It's a long oo. Oo. And for example, it's a long oo and it makes loot. The next is, it's a hat sound. For example, in hat. For example, in chat. These are all known as single vowels. There are some vowels that do not exist alone, rather they work in the collaboration with some other vowels as well, that makes two. For example, there is, let's say, there is one, it starts with E and it ends with A, it makes A. It makes A, eight, as in eight. Then there are the vowels. It starts with O, it ends with I, it oil, oil, it makes oil. Then there are, yes, it starts with schwa sound, it ends with hook sound, and it makes O, O. About, for example, in about. Then there are some, it starts with this, then it is like this, ow. For example, in out. These are some of the vowels, and I hope that you have got now a clearer idea of consonants and the vowels. These are different speech sounds. Consonants are produced with a restriction in the airflow, whereas vowels are pronounced without a restriction in the airflow. As the difference is in front of you, a, e, eh. These are different vowels where there is no restriction in the flow, whereas in the consonants there are ha, ma, na, ing. These are some of the sounds that have some restriction in the airflow. Now let's move on to the natural classes of phonemes. Natural classes of phonemes, there are natural classes. For example, the phonemes can be consonants. Consonants, they can be within consonants, they can be nasal. that are pronounced through by using your nasal cavity, that are voiced, that makes vibration in your local cords, that can be labial, and that makes the use of your two lips, that can be sibilant, and as well as there can be some vowels. Vowels can be high vowels that pronounced with a high pitch. There are some low vowels, there are some back vowels, there are some rounded vowels, there are some tense vowels. So these are some natural classes of the phonemes that exist there. I just want to give you a brief idea that about the sounds and the alphabets within a language. Phonology, as I said, it is specific to one language. It moves on to the broader level. It moves on to studying the broader features of the language. Phonetics is concerned only with the production, with the transmission, and with the perception of the speech sound, whereas phonology, it studies the supra-segmental features. Supra-segmental. Segmental, the units. Suprasegmentals, above the level of the units. For example, the suprasegmental features would also include intonation. Your intonation is the rise and fall of speech. For example, let me tell you, if intonation is a thing that really has a great impact on your language, that can in conveying your messages, it can, if you have different intonations, it can convey different meanings. For example, as I say, I read the newspaper daily. My emphasis, my intonation is rising high towards the end. It's on daily. I read the newspaper daily. It means the focus is on daily. And suppose if I say, I read the newspaper daily. The newspaper, the more focus is on newspaper, not on the daily thing. So this is intonation, the rise and fall of your speech. Then comes stresses. Phonology also discusses some stresses. Stress can be on word level, stress can be on phrase level, stress can be on sentence level. Word level, on the lexical level, on a single word. Let's say you are emphasizing within a good, pretty lady. A good, pretty lady. Pretty, you are emphasizing pretty. It's, the emphasis is not on lady, it's on her being more pretty. Then, for example, the stress can move on to phrases, where you would be stressing all of the phrases. A blonde hair lady I just passed through. A blonde hair, it's a phrase that is coming in as a subject of the whole sentence. So you are emphasizing, you are stressing that a blonde hair lady in that overall sentence. Sometimes the thing is that you are emphasizing the whole of the sentence overall in a complete conversation. For example, if somebody asks me, if my friend would ask me and say, let's go for a movie, and I say, no, I'd got to prepare my lectures. Definitely my emphasis, my stress is going to be on the second line. It's the way. Stress is putting emphasis on the word of focus. The thing that is of more focus for you, definitely you are going to put focus onto that. Let's move on to the second level of language. We have discussed phonology and phonetics. That was the first level of language. Now we are moving on to the second level. We have gone through the basics that are of sounds, the speech sounds of language. Now we are moving on to the words. It's a bit upper level. It comes on the second stage. The study of how morphemes can combine in a given language to form words falls under the rubric of morphology. So what we will be studying in this morphology, actually the main focus would be on certain things. For example, the study of how morphemes, the important point is morphemes, that how they can combine in a given language to form words. Then firstly the single morphemes and then to form words fall under the rubric of morphology. There are the two things that we are going to study in morphology. The first thing, that what are these morphemes, and then that how do they combine to make up the overall morphology. Consider this pluralizing s. There is one word, for example, it has got s. Clearly this conveys meaning, but it does not qualify as a word. What it qualifies is as a morpheme, along with cat, dog and ings. The study of how morphemes can combine in a given language to form words fall under the rubric of morphology. Yes, within I'll be just telling you that what is a morpheme, that then we'll be moving on to discussing that how do these morphemes combine, the form together to make up the comprehensible sentences. Yes, look at the slide. Morpheme, we said, is a small, firstly the definition of morpheme, and it's once again important to note that this is the smallest, this is the minimal, and this is the contrastive. These are the three main points: the smallest, minimal and contrastive, same as we just discussed in phonology. Within phonology, phoneme was the smallest, that comes at the most lowest level. Minimal, that cannot be further divided. Contrastive, that can be changed with some other morpheme. Unit of a word, the difference lies here. This is the unit of a word. That was the unit of speech sound. Phonology is about sounds, morphology is about words. So the morpheme would be about the unit of word is known as morpheme. Morpheme, actually, while we divide the morpheme, there are one or two things. The main morpheme would be known as the root. If there are some prefixes or if there are suffixes, it is divided into prefix and the suffix, and the root would be the main word. Let's look at the next example. For example, one example is, example is waiting. Within waiting, you know that this is the main word. Wait. What is this? This is the root, the main word. It does not have anything that comes here, so it has no prefix. It has ing that comes later on, so ing is what? This is suffix. Okay, now come to another example of another word. Yes, this usual, unusually, the word is unusually. Usual is the main word. It is root. Okay, un is a prefix, it comes before this. Then li is what? This is, li is suffix, and this one is the prefix. The first one is the prefix, the second is the suffix. I hope now you have got a little idea that how different words are a combination of different morphemes. Morphemes itself is further subdivided into root, prefix and the suffix. This is the formula actually. The root, first comes prefix plus root, and then plus there comes suffix. Yes, this is the general formula of dividing a morpheme further into its constituent parts. While we deal with all these things, we say that we are studying morphology. While we look at the properties of individual words, while we look at the combination of different words, we say that we are studying morphology. Let's move on to the third level of language. It is once again a little broader level. We have looked at the properties of speech sounds. We have looked at the words. Now we are moving on to the syntax. Syntax is simply the study of grammatical rules of a language is known as syntax. A language is a combination of words. These words are not randomly put together. They are in order. They have a structure. They follow some rules. So that is a syntax. If we study that structure, the rules behind its formation, we say that we are studying syntax. We put words together into sentences according to the rules of syntax. What most people mean by the word grammar. Fine. Whenever we'll be combining up the words, it means that we are combining up it through grammar. This small number of rules is learned in early childhood and results in a small array of possible sentence patterns. This small number of rules is learned in early childhood, definitely. While we start just learning a language, while we start just going to our schools to start our education, we start learning the syntactical patterns, the syntax, the grammatical rules and regulations of a language. The small number of rules is learned in early school childhood and results in a small array of possible sentences patterns. Syntax is primary level of creativity in speaking and writing, because from those few patterns of phrase and sentence, an infinite number of sentences can be generated. Yes, one very simple rule, that it comes firstly with the passage of time. The more mature you grow, the more mature you are in your vocabulary, the more mature you are in your grammars, in your proficiency over language, the more better you can do it. Now what happens actually, syntax is the primary level of creativity in speaking. While a child starts speaking language, the baby starts by using random words. Initially, a baby would perhaps say water. It means he's asking for the water. He's not using complete sentences. Perhaps he would say pain. Perhaps he's feeling some pain somewhere. He's not saying it completely, or he is just pointing out to the things. He is not using the complete words. But the moment he grows a little younger, he starts learning the language. He starts putting it in the exact order, apart from being random. He says, I need water. I'm feeling pain. He intentionally or unintentionally, by his or her exposure to the language, starts putting it under the grammatical rules. Now he has started acquiring the grammatical rules. This is what, out of some limited vocabulary, he started producing some infinite number of sentences. He started generating sentences. This is how the language moves on to the level of syntax. Examples of syntax, where we are analyzing certain grammatical rules. The first example is that of noun phrase. For example, the pretty girl. It's a structure. It's a structure on the level of phrase. Here the is the determiner. Pretty is adjective. And girl is a noun. And this is a rule. It's a grammatical rule that the things would come this way. We cannot say girl the pretty. It will not have any grammatical structure. We cannot say the girl pretty again it will not have any grammatical structure and perhaps is not acceptable. So this structuring and the application of grammatical rules is known as syntax. The next is the verb phrase. The verb phrase is a combination of have, been, doing, work. All these are verbs. Some are auxiliary verbs, some are helping verbs. Still, it's all is a verbal phrase. We cannot put it in some other order. It will not be acceptable. So, the grammatical rules apply here as well. Then, the sentence is, it's too cold in here. It's too cold in here. Cold, it's too. It's is a subject. Cold is about the condition. And in here is about the context. Again, there are the certain structures, there are the certain things that have to be put. A very, very general grammatical structure of English, as all of you know, is the subject, verb and object. First comes the subject, then comes the verb, then comes the object. This is a traditionally accepted syntactical and grammatical rule of English for making any simple sentence. We have covered up till now the 3 levels of linguistics that have dealt with a little hierarchy of the things. Now we are moving on to level number 4, and the level 4 is that of semantics. We are now moving beyond the physical things. Now we are moving on to the understanding of language. It is semantics is simply, in simple words, is known as the study of meanings in a language. Language, as somebody said that language without meanings is just meaningless. It is also defined in some technical terms in this way, that a term that is refer to the study of meanings, and since meaning is a part of language, so semantics is a part of linguistics. It is quite true. There is, the language is not only about individual speech sounds. It's not only about the words. It's not only about how to put in the correct order. It's not about the arrangement. It is more about the meanings that we put on in the language. The focus is on meanings, where we are trying to extract the meanings. Language is not one way to me. We speak, we express our feelings, sometimes to our own selves, definitely. Then we speak to somebody else. We are talking to somebody else as well. And we are trying to, if we are saying something, the other person is definitely getting it. That person is trying to make out some meanings, trying to get out some meanings. Since meaning is a part of the language, as you know, there is a relation between meanings and language. Meaning is a part of that, understanding of language. So, semantics, we can say, is a part of linguistics. Because linguistics is concerned with the scientific study of language. Semantics is a branch of linguistics that deals with the study of meanings, changes in the meanings, and the principles that govern the relationship between sentences or the words and their meanings. The focus is on different things. For example, it's not only the study of meanings, rather it's in changes in the meanings, a new concept. We were talking about the language change. Did the language changes? Its different forms changes? So do the meanings. The meaning, for example, a word, there is a word that is known as meat. The word meat, these days, what it refers to? You know it very well. Meat, while we listen the word meat, we just got to know that meat refers to chicken, to mutton, to beef, or to fish maximum, or to some kind of mince, to nothing else. Meat is this thing, you know. But previously, meat was used to refer to all the food items. So now you have seen that how the meanings of the things have changed, how the meanings of the words have changed. So semantics is concerned with the changes in the meanings and the principles that govern the relationships between sentence or the words and their meanings. Yes, it is also going to look at the relationship between sentences or the words and their meanings. It will be, the focus is on meanings. It is a study of relationships between signs and symbols and what they represent. Very early said that language is a blend of sounds, of words, of symbols, images, pictures, of many things. So language, it is a relationship between the signs and symbols and what they represent. Definitely a sign stands for something, a symbol is a representation of something. It is going to look at those aspects as well. An understanding of semantics is essential to the study of language acquisition. How language users acquire a sense of meanings as speakers and the writers listen and the readers. Yes, another important aspect of semantics is that it would also be focusing on language acquisition. Language acquisition is acquiring, learning of language, where we are trying to learn some new language. And we'll be focusing that how the language users, definitely, if let's suppose I don't know anything about Pashto, I go and I try to learn and acquire that language. What do I really do? I would try to understand the meanings of that language first. Then I would try to learn it. So, meanings and language learning are both comprehensible for each other. They are complementary for each other. They are necessary for each other. Example, a very beautiful example of this thing is, it's a very, very classic example actually of semantics that is given by Chomsky. Perhaps you don't know the name of that person, and let me write it here. Chomsky. Noam Chomsky, he's a father of modern linguistics, a very, very well known person who gave many theories in language learning, language acquisition. He gave this classical example of colorless green ideas sleep furiously. Colorless, the first thing is that the ideas are, this is colorless. Then he says it's green. This is contradiction, isn't it? The colorless and then the green. And then what this thing is, these are ideas. Do you think that the ideas can be colorless and in the green at the same time? And then what these ideas are doing? They are sleeping. They sleep. Do the ideas sleep or they get up? If the ideas are sleeping, and then the ideas are actually sleeping furiously. Again, it's a beautiful classic combination of words to refer to many different ambiguities of language, many complexities of language. And it tells us that although we see that it is a complete description of this good grammatical rules, it's a good application of grammatical rules on the language. As you can see that colorless green ideas is a subject. Sleep is a verb. An object is not there. It's a combination of the typical things that are there. For example, subject, verb, and then adverb, that is adding, modifying to the qualities of verb. Grammatically, it is absolutely correct, because as we said that firstly there must be subject, then there must be the verb. But as we can understand, as we were talking about meanings, we say that this is not correct semantically, because it is not making any sense. It is not giving us any meanings. It does not make anything clear. If we're talking about ideas, how can they be colorless, and then how can they be green? And if they are colorless and if they're green at the same time, how they can sleep? And let's say if they're sleeping, and then how can they be furious? How they can sleep furiously? So while we talk about semantics, about the meanings, it is a totally nonsense. Whereas while we look at it from the point of view of syntax, from the point of view of grammar, it is a classic example. It has subject, it has verb, it has adverb, it has everything. So we come to the conclusion that a sentence of language should not only be grammatically correct, but should also be semantically correct. That it should not only have the correct order of the words, but also it should give a clearer sense of the words as well, a clearer sense of the idea as well. We said that semantics is about the symbols. Let's look at the picture. Let's try to analyze what are the meanings over there. Perhaps there's a brick, there's a wall, then there are the signals. These are some kind of road signals. The arrow is there. Perhaps it is about the turn. And then there's another thing, the bird is flying. It's about again a turn, perhaps the area where the birds can pass from. So we are getting certain meanings out of these symbols, out of these pictures as well. Semantics is about the symbols, about the language and the meanings that we get from. The fifth level of language is that of pragmatics. Now we are going beyond the sentence level. We are going beyond the sentence itself. We are looking at the context. The important thing is the study of language in use. Whatever the language you are using in a specific, actually the important thing here would be context. The study of language in use. The study of language according to the context, according to a situation, according to specific things would be known as pragmatics. It's not about the sentence that is written, rather it's something that is hidden in the sentence. We are going to analyze that as well. We are going to read that as well in the language. Campson, 1986, is of the view that the study of pragmatics is concerned with the general principles necessary for retrieving information from a specific utterance based on the context. Campson, there are certain things, he says, that is a study of pragmatics is concerned with the general principles necessary for retrieving information. Yes, you are required to, if the two people are talking, let's suppose within the classic view of conversation, let's suppose that there is a speaker. Okay? A communication is going on between the speaker and the listener. We are saying the listener would try to understand, to retrieve what the speaker is saying, what he is actually talking about from a specific utterance based on the context. And this overall communication, it would be based in a context. It would be according to a specific situation, according to a specific background in which the situation would be going on. It's a process of successful communication. Let's think. Let's say that there is one speaker on one side. The speaker uses language And there is one aspect of pragmatics that is there, is the needs appropriateness. While a speaker is speaking, that speaker must be able to speak it in a appropriate way. It needs appropriateness, that this thing is appropriate or not. Let's say if there are a few words that I cannot use with my students, but that I can use with my colleague, with my friends. Okay, this is appropriateness. You need to use the language according to the formalities, according to the things, according to the situation, according to the background. The second part of pragmatics would be that there is a listener. Listener is retrieving the language. He listens, tries to understand, and needs to comprehend what is being said. But there can come some problem. Perhaps I said something else, you understood something else. That is a kind of problem that may exist. But we are going to study in pragmatics all these things. Yes, even after extracting a set of literal meanings from sentences, there is still the level of pragmatics. Language is usually and the cooperative process between at least two people, and conversations involve a subtle interplay of assumptions, requests and expectations on a part of the each speaker. Definitely, it's not the same thing. Language is not a thing that just goes on without speaking. It is going on. No. It's not. It's more about conversation. You interact with the people. You talk to them. Having said something, how can you be sure the other person understand? What should you say first? How do you keep from repeating yourself? When is it the other person's turn to talk? Does this person really want to know if I have a watch, or does she really want to know what time it is? These kind of problems are hard enough for humans to work out, and to date no computer program even approaches human capabilities at this level. This is the level of pragmatics, where you are speaking in a certain way, you are looking at the conditions, you are looking at the context, you are looking at the background, the listener is trying to understand. Perhaps there can be the communication can go smoothly, the communication can have certain problems, but still it goes on. And this is the level of pragmatics, where you go beyond the level of the sentence. You try to look at the complete conversation, you try to understand what is being said or what is not being said. For example, there's a person who's known as Peter, and Peter says, "Do you want some coffee?" And Mary says, "Coffee would keep me awake." This is not a direct answer to Peter's question. Still, we assume, we get to know that there is some kind of relationship that exists between these two participants of the communication, and they are actually, what they are doing, they are understanding. Okay, they are understanding each other, they are understanding to what is being said. Why? Because the reason of their understanding is that perhaps they have got the shared background, they are having the same knowledge, they are trying to understand. If, let's say, this is the quality of pragmatics, if the two person is talking, the third person enter in, perhaps that person will not be able to comment, because the two people, they know the background, they know the context, they know the meanings of their conversation. The third person does not know. This is the study of pragmatics that goes beyond the sentence level and that talks more about the language in use. The last but not the least is the level of discourse. It deals with the study of language above the level of sentence. Now we have gone far beyond the level of sentence. We started with the speech sounds, we moved on to the words, we moved on to the structure, we moved on to the meanings of single word, moved on to the meanings of a conversation. Now it's discourse. Discourse, just for your understanding, is the study of the language above the level of sentence. When we move above the level of sentence, we form a complete paragraph, we have a complete text, we say it's the study of discourse. Discourse is what? Discourse includes everything. It includes everything. It can be both written and spoken, whatever is going on. Discourse is an identity kit. It involves the way you walk. It involves the way you talk. It represents the way you sit, the way you behave, the way you wear, the way you look, the way you do the things. It is everything. James Paul G has very, very beautifully and precisely explained it in this sentence. The discourse is an identity kit. It is an identity kit of a person. It talks about everything. It shows everything. Discourse. There are some examples of discourse as well. Each unit of a language generally has a form that governs the whole. There is a complete whole. This piece of writing is a web page, a piece of instruction in expository prose. Just a minute ago, I was interrupted by a telephone conversation, a special form of speaking dependent on the technology and governed by the certain expectations of form and content. All the literary genres are the kind of discourse units in the literary spheres of cultures. There are so many things, everything that you are doing, everything that you are speaking, overall your conversations, all those things are a discourse. You are attending this lecture, this is a discourse. You are having your notes, that is a discourse. You are making your assignments, that is a discourse. You are studying somewhere, that is a discourse. You are going to have a talk to your mother, that is a discourse. You are over whatever you are doing, above the level of a sentence that goes beyond, it is a discourse actually. Very beautiful examples are given here. For example, it's the piece of writing of a web page. If you are browsing on the internet, it is a discourse, we say. The piece of instructions, the instructions in expository prose. If you are giving some instructions in some prose, in any of the thing, in some user manual, that is a discourse. Just a minute ago, as I just told you, that I had a telephone interruption, a telephone conversation with my colleague. What was that? That was nothing but another example of discourse. So there are some literary genres are also a kind of discourse. Genres are simply known as the kinds of the things. So we have today, with this way, we come to the end of the levels of language. We have looked at, let me give you a quick recapitulation of what we have done today in our lecture number 3. We have looked at in detail the levels of language. Actually, these levels of language we have studied are, we can say, are hierarchical. These starts from the base. The phonetics and phonology, we can say it's a base. It is a combination of sounds, of speech sounds. Okay, it is the base. We have within phonetics and phonology, firstly we discussed the definitions. Then we also said that we also discussed phonemes. We looked at the individual consonants and vowels. We said that there are 26 alphabets in English language, but there are 44 phonemes. There are 44 speech sounds in a language. Then we moved on to the speech sounds to the morphology. There was about words. Words, it was not only about the words plus words formation. That how different words are formed. It was about that. Then we moved from the words to their combination of grammatical rules. Yes, it was about the grammatical rules, that how we can apply some grammatical rules on the syntax, on the combination of the words. We moved on to the grammatical rules to the study of meanings in the next level that was regarded as semantics. We looked at the words, we tried to look at the literal meanings, the surface meanings, the deep meanings of the things. Then we moved on from the meanings to pragmatics. That was about the meanings in context. Yes, the meanings in context, that how language is used within a specific context and what does that specifically mean. From those individual units of conversation, then we moved on to the level of discourse. That was a level of broader level, and that we regarded as an identity kit. So the things ended this way, and with this we come to the end of the third lecture, and inshallah see you again in the next lecture. Till then, take good care and Allah Hafiz.